بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين وعلى آله وصحبته أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We send peace and blessings upon our beloved messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon his family, his companions, and those who follow them until the end of time. Brothers and sisters, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, it's great to be here in the community, alhamdulillah, here in Minnesota to visit. I was supposed to visit, I think, like a month ago. There was inclement weather in New York City. And then today, it's very interesting, on the hammock, we were like delayed. And then finally we took off, and then we found out like the airport that we just left, LaGuardia, had been shut down because of the shutdown, subhanAllah. So we barely made it, again, on the skins of our kufi, alhamdulillah. So it's a blessing to be here with you all, to see the wonderful community growing. I always tell people there's like a mosque that has a post office in it, and no one believes me, so I said, okay, go to Minneapolis, go to Minnesota, see there's a masjid with a post office next to it, alhamdulillah. What I was asked to talk about is kind of our challenge that we face in the current climate, especially with Trump, the success of Trump, this kind of nasty populism that we've seen. And I think there's 3 or 4 assumptions that we need to unpack. Number one is the assumption that people tend to say, like, what has America become? You know, like, gosh darn it, what have we become? Whereas for the reality is, this is what America has always been. And we should be under no illusion as to the fact that America has still never reached its full potential as a democracy. If you don't believe me, just ask black folks. If you don't believe me, just ask Native Americans. If you don't believe me, ask, mashallah, immigrant communities in this country who historically their admittance into America has always been perceived and framed and constructed as a threat to the predominant white establishment. So I think the first is, while certainly America certainly offers us opportunity, definitely agency economically and utility financially, we should not fall into this kind of notion of like, what has it become? Because that would perhaps place us as a community who's commanded to be social interlocutors and political agitators and spiritual agitators, to maybe seek a time in America where everything was great, where it wasn't. And that also allows us to put ourselves in a permanent prophetic position of being agitators, being reminders, and calling people to a higher set of principles. The second is that populism, the ability to, move the masses and to center the masses around messaging, whether good or bad, is actually something we're very familiar with as a community. For example, Shaitan himself. Shaitan, when he speaks to Adam and his wife in Surah Al-A'raf, he uses a plural form. وَقَاسَمَهُمَا إِنِّي لَكُمَا لَمِنَ النَّاصِحِينَ. He didn't say, إِنِّي لَكُمْ نَاصِحٌ أَمِينٌ. He says, I swear to both of you, like, you should eat from this tree. And I am from a large number of people who wanted to, like, tell you this, but, like, I'm your friend. Like, I got your back. So I'm the one that's telling you. But there's a massive amount of people who have this opinion, or jinn. Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah, he brilliantly comments on this verse and Shaitan's use of language, and he says, this is the first example of false advertisement, fake news, and the first example of peer pressure. As if to make Adam and his wife feel like, you're the minority, You need to swing over here and eat from the tree. We also see that in the same chapter, then this is interesting that it takes place all together in the same chapter. The idea of a majority of human beings are somehow coalescing around a message is used to influence people who may be on the truth. قال الملأ الذين كفروا من قومي قال الملأ الذين كفروا من قولي. You know, over and over in Surah Al-A'raf, this group of people, this group of leaders are set out to influence the masses. Over and over in the Quran, we see that there are examples of dangerous populism, such as we see today, and even positive examples of populism that we'll talk about in a minute. Through our own history, as a community, more recent, we see in the Quran, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيُشْهِدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا فِي قَلْبِهِ وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. Allah mentions in Surah Al-Baqarah how somebody came to the companions of Sayyidina Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, and this person, you know, we believe that charisma is important. Charisma is a component of prophethood. The Prophet said alayhi salatu wasalam, أَنَا أَفْصَحُ الْعَرَبِ. Sah? In a sound hadith, he said, like, I am the most eloquent of the Arabs. There's a weak narration, says, wal ajam. SubhanAllah. I am the most eloquent human being in general. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And also in Sahih al-Bukhari, Sayyidina Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam said, Inna min al-bayani la sihr. Ya salam. He said, you know, there's like a form of expression which is like magic. Like it can seduce you. So we believe like charisma is important. Nobody wants an imam that like yunimun nas, like puts people to sleep. We don't want a da'iyah who's not passionate about what he or she says. But at the same time, we should never confuse charisma for qualifications and education and being competent. Everybody can be charismatic usually. It's not hard. But not everybody is qualified to speak on specific topics. So here we find in Surah Al-Baqarah, somebody came to the Sahaba. The Sahaba were impressed by his or her way of speaking, the way that he or she carried themselves. But this person went and burned the crops of the companions of the Prophet. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the hypocrites, he mentions that they are very charismatic. كَأَنَّهُمْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ. You know, like you're وَإِن يَسْتَعْمَلْ إِلَى قَوْلٍ. Like when you hear what they say and when they talk, يُعْجِبُكَ. It's like, it's amazing the way they talk. كَأَنَّهُمْ خُشُبٌ مُسَنَّدَةٌ. And then this beautiful metaphor is given where it says they are like, you know, wood, but it's like wood that has no internal components. It's like very beautiful on the outside. It's like a false wood. So the outside is very beautiful. That's their speech and how they carry themselves. But internally is empty. So it's like you could just push them over. We find that in the time of our community, throughout our history, unfortunately, we have been deceived by populism in bad ways. It's very easy to find religious meaning in how someone dresses, and how someone talks, and how someone plays the part. But a more mature, invested religious experience is to be able to look beyond some of those things. I'm not talking about the fard of dress, of course. I'm talking about the fashion, religious fashion. So, for example, Ibn al-Nahwi, I teach one of his books at my school online. You can sign up, suhaib.com, shameless plug, mashallah. And Imam Ibn al-Nahwi was one of the greatest Maliki scholars of the 6th century. He was from Tunis. He was the student of 3 great Imams. One of them being Imam al-Lakhami, who in the Maliki school is considered mujtahid. Imam Khalil says, that I relied on the ikhtiyarat when I used the word because Al-Lakhami was known to be such a scholar that كان يخالف المذهب وكان يجتهد, that he was a mujtahid on his own in the madhab, so he differed. Al-Qadi Iyad said, he differed with the madhab. And of course, the other great sheikh of Imam Ibn Nahwi is Al-Mazari. And Al-Mazari, of course, is from Mazara, which is in southern Italy, Sicily. Because there were Arabs, subhanAllah, that lived there. The Maliki school flourished. Not only did it flourish in Spain, it flourished in southern Italy. But unlike Spain, and this is important for us in America to think about, the Malikis in southern Italy did not disappear because of oppression and pressure. They disappeared because of opulence. They just assimilated, just fell into everything. They were given everything they wanted. So sometimes pressure is a good thing. But Imam al-Mazari also, mashallah, is considered one of the great, great, great scholars, one of the great free thinkers in the school. So Ibn Nahwi is a student of these people. The reason I say this, and of course Imam al-Ghazali, rahimahullah. So three people have like this really important impact on Ibn Nahwi. And Ibn Nahwi, the reason I say that, is wherever this miskeen, wherever Ibn Nahwi went to teach, he would be banned from teaching. So, for example, when he was forced to leave his city because the ruler took his property and his land, and he spoke out against this, and hada haram, to take my property and everything, because he spent 30 years away from his home studying. So when he came back, and I've seen this happen in Muslim countries, when people are gone for a long time, and they come back, there'll be people living in their house, man. They're like, yo, who are you? Oh, I'm your uncle. I don't remember, what uncle are you? The 14th uncle through this person. They have like stories for it, man. Like, no, dude, you're not my uncle. And they get into a big fight. You're not my uncle. Get out of my house. But at this situation, Ibn Nahwi, his property was taken by the government. So as a scholar, he doesn't use khurujun an al-hukam. He doesn't use this Sunni quietism to be silent in the face of oppression. This is some nonsense that we're being fed by the Saudi state and the Egyptians, to be quiet in the face of political corruption. Anyone that wants to challenge me on this, go to إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا قَالَ وَمِن ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يُنَالُ عَهْدِيَ الظَّالِمِينَ. And read the tafsir of Imam al-Jassas. And read the tafsir of Al-Razi. Al-Razi said that if the Amir is a fasiq in the Muslim community, لَا طَاعَةَ لَهُ, then there should be no obedience to him. So this idea of Sunni quietism, just let people ram their feet down your throat and you be quiet, alhamdulillah, satadkhulu jannah. This is some created political nonsense. And we see now what has happened in the Muslim world, subhanAllah, especially the Sunni community. So Imam Ibn Nahwi, he stands up and he speaks truth to power, is my point, and he's removed. And then he moves to a city in northern Morocco, and he does what he does. He begins to teach, and someone was passing by him, and he said, what is he teaching? He said, he's teaching ilm al-kalam wa usul al-fiqh. And he said, هذا يدخل علينا علوم لا نعرفها. And this guy is teaching something we never knew before. وَأَمَرَ بِإِخْرَاجِهِ. So they ordered him to be banned from the mosque. Then he went to Fes. And he thought, when I go to Fes, alhamdulillah, I'll find scholars and ulama, the intellectual climate will be better, and I'll find a place of stability where I can practice my craft. And he began to teach in Al-Fes, and this is interesting if anyone here is from Morocco. At that time, the Morabitun, who were extreme, the Morabitun who ran Morocco and Spain, they ordered بِإِحْرَاقِ قُطْبِ Abi Hamid al-Ghazali. They ordered that the books of Ghazali in Morocco now, where Ghazali is like, that's all you find, be burned. Ibn Nahwi is the student of who? So he says, whoa, you can't burn the books of my sheikh, man. It's my sheikh, bro. And also the Morabitun were very strict Malikis, to the point that they would not even allow people to study the variant opinions in the madhab. So you're only allowed to study one opinion in fiqh and one opinion in theology, only Ash'ira. You could only study the Ash'a'ira. Ibn Nahwi is a master of theology and a master of fiqh. There's a reason why I'm telling you this story, because it's going to come home in a second. So, as a scholar of 2 or 3 of the great scholars of the madhab who were not muqallids, Mazuri, of course, stayed within the parameters of the madhab, but especially Al-Lakhami. Ibn Nahwi is someone who is enlightened. He's a scholar. He's way up here. So he's not. They said, وَكَنْ يَجْتَهِدْ. They said he was a mujtahid. He was a great scholar. وَكَنْ يُخَالِفُ الْمَذْهَبِ. And there were times when he's like, I don't agree with this opinion in the madhab, because he was that type of scholar. So in Fes, under the Marabitun, under Malik ibn Yusuf, he was banned again. وَأَمَرَ بِإِخْرَاجِهِ. That's why his life is miskeen. Wherever he went, he's banned. But he's banned in the name of populism, is my point. Because the Marabitun created an environment prior to the advent of Ibn Nahwi that's very important. The Marabitun were founded by Abdullah ibn Yasin, rahimahullah. Who is Abdullah ibn Yasin? Abdullah ibn Yasin was a convert to Islam who was known to be extremely charismatic and passionate, but successfully ignorant. Does it sound familiar? So the ulama, initially when Abdullah ibn Yasin began his da'wah, he was extremely harsh, especially on non-Muslims. And he reprimanded Muslims who were like, And he felt that we have to impose Islam on these people. Whereas the generations before him and the ulama were much more tolerant, much more nuanced, much more introspective and intelligent. They understood public policy and how people change and how you engage people. Abdullah ibn Yasin becomes extremely frustrated by this. I'm a convert, so I know when we convert to Islam, we tend to be very passionate. But we're not tethered by knowledge. We haven't had enough time to experience Islam in a rich way. So he becomes extremely passionate. He calls people to the Quran, to the madhab, and to our madhab in theology, the Ash'a'ira, with absolute intolerance. And the masses follow him. You see it now if you go online on YouTube, right? Whoever has a cool camera and expensive light, and they're very passionate, they could say some of the most abhorrent things. And you'll find people will follow them. But then you'll find someone like Imam Joe Bradford, who's like a brilliant scholar, right? Preaching a very responsible, incredibly powerful message. And people will question him, not because of the bells and whistles of charisma, but because what he's saying is so intelligent. Someone like Yasir Qadi, someone like Omar Suleiman, someone like Yasmin Mugahid, will preach something very nuanced and responsible and practical and rooted in the depths of Sharia. But we would rather go for the lunatics. I gave you 2 centuries of Moroccan history, right? Really quickly. I saw this, I studied Arabic with a sheikh from Somalia. I see a lot of brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Yes, I know. This was a scholar who was a Sufi. He was a master of the Arabic language. He was a master of qira'at. He was an alim. And he was forced out of his home from Somalia by people who, in the name of being on the haqq, amara bi ikhraji. So he came to America. I remember I was giving a khutbah and I read one really unique poem that's not easy to find. And he came and he was like, you made a mistake in this poem. And I said, man, how do you know about this poem? Then he said, my name is Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Tahir from blah, 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 from Ahl Bayt, and I memorized more than 30,000 lines of poetry. And I said, why would someone kick you from their country? And he was like, أخرجني باسم الحق ليبعد الناس عن الحق. They evicted me in the name of truth to keep my people from the truth. Subhanallah. هذا الرجل, he memorized قطر النداء وبل صدى. and memorize Shadhur al-Dhahab and all the shawahid. So through our history, the point I'm making is if we're not careful, we find that there's people who use populism to keep us away from our unity, to divide us, to harm us, to weaken our institutional ability, and then leave us with nothing. We know Ibn Rushd, like everybody loves to say, Ibn Rushd is such a great scholar, and mashallah, Ibn Rushd was one of the great philosophers and so on. Do you know how he died? He died in house arrest. Ibn Rushd, nobody wants to talk about it. They say about Ibn Rushd, Imam al-Dhahabi mentions that he only missed studying 2 nights of his life. The night he got married and the night his father died. And the nights that he had children. Like other than that, like he was known to be someone who's constantly studying and engaging ilm. But who ordered him to be put in house arrest? They say, mat mahbusan, were the Muslimin, who were swayed again by the murabit notions of populism. Who's the most famous scholar of tafsir in our history as Sunnis? Ibn Kathir. No, Ibn Kathir is a summary of the most famous mufassir. Ibn Kathir is merely a summary, 4 volumes. Al-Tabari, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. Do you know how he died? In house arrest, because the Hanabila ordered him to be put in house arrest. So our history, what I'm trying to say to you is if you go back through history, before we start to criticize Trump, because we're going to get into him, is filled with a community up until now, where an imam who's trained, a scholar, regardless of where they come from, whether they're trained in Saudi Arabia, whether they're trained in Pakistan, whether they're trained in Africa, whether they're trained in Egypt, someone who has very little scholarly credentials and bona fides, but may be more passionate and have a better ring light and a 4K camera, will work to undermine that person. And the masses usually go with it. So I'm saying, like, let's also reflect on our own state of affairs. Imam al-Sha'rani, Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani, mashallah, the Rajul Azim, he wrote a book called Tabaqat al-Shafi'iyah. And in Egypt, in Cairo, there's a gate called Bab al-Sha'rani. Imam al-Sha'rani was one of the greatest scholars of his time. And he said in his book, one day I went to Masjid Sayyidina Hussein alayhi salam. As I was passing through Masjid Sayyidina Hussein radiyallahu anhu, I saw this guy who had this large group of people following him. And I was shocked because I knew the ulama of Egypt and the ulama of Al-Azhar before Azhar was corrupted. I knew these people. So I went to him and I said, hey, assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. Who are you? I never met you before, mashallah. He said, you know, my name is such and such, from the Fallah, yani from Sa'id. And then Sheikh Sha'rani said to him, why do these people follow you? And he said, لأنني واعظ. I'm a good speaker. I'm a good واعظ القصص. I know how to tell stories really well. So these people, they follow me. I'm their sheikh, I'm their qutb. So then Sheikh Sha'rani said, can I ask you a question? He said, sure. He said, what are the shurut of bay'u sullam? Like, what are the conditions of this certain type of purchase? And he said, you know, ma arafnash yani. He answered in Amiyah, I don't know. He said, what are the shurut of wudu? He said, I don't know. He says, subhanallah, someone who hasn't mastered the outer wants to lead people in the inner. Not to be controversial, but just to take the story, whether you agree with his personality or not, it's okay, I understand. Shaykh al-Akbar, Ibn Arabi, in his Futuhat al-Makkiyah, Imam al-Suyuti said, I researched every criticism of Ibn Arabi and found that every one of them batila. They had no basis. Like somebody made these things up to attack him. Just for your FYIs. We're so good at tearing people down, mashallah. Ibn Arabi, radiallahu anhu, when he went to Mecca, he said, I went into the masjid and I found the most ahmaq human being I've ever seen in my life. He said, the most ignorant person I've ever met in my life, I met in Mecca making tawaf. So, of course, his students said, Shaykh, how could you meet an ignorant person in Mecca? Mecca is the place of awliya. Mecca is the place of salihin. He said, La, wallahi al-azim. He said, I met like the most ignorant human being ever. Listen to what happens. It may sound familiar. You may have ran into one of these people recently somewhere on a forum or something. He said, why? He said, that person, I saw him, he was making a tawaf. He had a lot of people following him. So I went to him. I said, hey, salamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. I came from Andalus. I just wanted to meet you and build a relationship with you because, mashallah, you have so many students. What is your core message? He said, my core message is there's no good left on the face of the earth. وَلَا خَيْرَ فِي أُمَّتِ سَيْدِنَا Muhammad. There's no good amongst the ummah. So he said, this was the most ignorant human being I ever met in my life. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, how did he die? He died in prison. Imam al-Bukhari, you should read how he died. He died being abandoned by the people because they were swayed by toxic populism that caused them to turn against, as Imam Ibn Qayyim writes about, one of the greatest tricks of shaitan is to use people to sway the masses from those who have the best benefit for them, subhanallah. That's why, if you look at the poetry of Ibn Nahwi, it's very sad. He said, لَبِسْتُ ثَوْبَ الرَّجَاء وَالنَّاسُ رَقَدُوا. He said, you know, I wore the clothes of hope, but everybody around me was sleeping. Abu Ala al-Bu'arri, also, he faced a lot of opposition. He said, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُ الْجَهْلَ فِي النَّاشِ فَاشِيًا تَعْلَمْتُ حَتَّى يُقَالُ أَنِّي جَاهِلُ. He said, you know, when I saw that ignorance became popular, ignorance was what was popping. I studied until people said I was ignorant. I mean, the people that were affected by this ubiquitous ignorance, they thought I was ignorant because knowledge to them was ignorance. But I had knowledge. So they couldn't judge me properly. So we need to also, before we talk about some strategies to engage this toxic populism, appreciate that our community historically, as Al-Hajj Malik Shabazz rahimahullah talks about, we've been bamboozled. So what should we do when we learn from people and follow people and listen to people? We should keep 5 things in mind. Number 1, the person that we're listening to is the same as us. You know, we like to live vicariously through other people, but that's not good. We shouldn't praise people too much. Prophet ﷺ said to say Jazakallahu khairan is sufficient. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That doesn't mean to be disrespectful, but not to praise people in a way that allows us to, in fact, imagine things about them which are unacceptable. And to be careful of people who, when they teach us, they say Ana Babullah, you know, I'm the only way to God. All these other imams, all these other sheikhs, all these other teachers, they're all bakwas. Sorry, astaghfirullah. They're all bad. They're not good. You shouldn't listen to them. I'm the only way to get to the truth. If you run into someone like this, run and flee for your life. Number 2 is, if they are surrounded by a group of people, and those group of people say, we are the only way to the truth. نحن أبواب الله وده باب الله ونحن أبوابه. Right?
He's the door, we're the doors to him. So those three homies hanging out on St. Paul River or whatever, listen to some talks on Pal Talk from the 90s, and saying, hey man, we're the only way to the truth. All the other groups are wrong. Run. Those are cults. Because any jama'ah, any group, its job is to serve the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, never to put itself in front of the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number three, if you find people using religious text irresponsibly to justify dividing us and to justify irresponsible behavior towards our parents, towards our loved ones, to reduce the importance of education and responsibility and activism and political engagement, run. I give an example. It's the famous hadith of Imam al-Tirmidhi radiyallahu anhu, who said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the Jews and Christians divided into 73 sects, my community 72 sects, my community will divide into 73 sects, kullaha fi nar ila wahid, all of them will be in the hellfire except one. This hadith is da'if. In fact, one of our mashayikh, he wrote a poem, he said, Iyakum wa kullu fi nari illa wahidan. He wrote this poem, he said, be careful of this hadith. Although Imam Ibn Hajar, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahumullah, Imam al-Shatibi, they considered this hadith sound. The majority of the ulama of hadith, they said this hadith is weak. The hadith of the saved sect. So, because what that hadith does, it allows someone to posit his or herself amongst the Muslim community as though, right? Whose baby is crying? Is that your baby crying? No, it's fine. I want you to stay, be happy. We love your baby. I got a baby on the way, right? So don't feel embarrassed. Your baby is our baby. You know what I mean? So we need to show that kind of love to mothers, man, and fathers, right? So Allah bless you and bless your baby, inshallah. All right, Ameen. Baby saying, Ameen. MashaAllah. Hafidhahullah. Hafidhahullah. So, in fact, Imam al-Suyuti, how did he become Imam al-Suyuti? Kan yal'abu bil masjid. Imam al-Suyuti, he used to play in the masjid of Sayyidina Ibn Talun. And once there was a great Imam, he was teaching in the masjid of Ibn Talun. He said, the walad da eh? Like, who's this kid running around? They said, da Ibn Suyuti hada. He said, that's the yatim, the orphan, as-Suyuti. He said, ujizuhu bi kulli ijazat allati indi ila Sayyidina Rasulullah. He said, I give him all my ijazas and asanid to Sayyidina Muhammad, لأنني رأيت نور محمد في وجهي, because I see the light of Muhammad in his face. That was Imam Ibn Hajar. فأجازه. He didn't say like, take that kid out of here. لا أجاز الحمد لله. وصنع ربانية. And he created a person, mashallah, bi'idnillah. So, marhaban bi babykum. But that hadith, we need to be very careful. Even those scholars who said this hadith is sound, like Ash-Shatibi in I'tisam, he said it's not allowed to use this hadith to divide the Muslims. I remember once, mashallah, in San Diego, I love San Diego, it's a lot warmer than it is here, that's for sure. Although your sports teams are better. So, I remember there's an Imam there, he's one of my teachers, mashallah, Sheikh Abdul Jalil from Morocco. So he said to me, you see that guy? There's one guy, he said, yeah, watch this. So I started watching after Jummah. So I was sitting next to this guy, and people would walk by, and literally, this convert brother would say, 64, 67, 71, 53. I said, man, what is he doing? He said, ask him. He said, yeah, you know the 73 sects? Everyone here except me is lost. I said, wow. Conflict of interest, right? Bismillah. Everyone except you. So then the Sheikh Abdul Jalil, he said, what about me? He said, yeah, 1.5. Ash-Shatibi, he was worried about this hadith. So he dedicated a lot of time discussing it because he knew that within the Sunni community, it could be used to wreck us. That's why you never find the Sahaba, even during the times of fitna, quoting this hadith. The Sahaba prayed janazah on the Khawarij and refused to take booty from them because they considered them Muslimin, subhanallah. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ بِالْحَنَفِيَّةِ سَمْحًا. So we need to be careful of people who use texts to justify dividing us. Of course, we have orthodoxy, we have foundational principles, we have certain non-negotiables, alhamdulillah, al-qat'iyat. But we can talk with people and try to educate people. Very rarely we find people that need to be dealt with in that harshness. The fourth thing that you should look out for, the sign that you're in a Muslim cult, is when people try to distance you from your family and your loved ones. So, for example, you come home to your wife and you disregard any of her concerns in the name of the sheikh you follow. That's a disaster, man. Or your husband, you completely eschew his contribution to decision making and you've outsourced it now to some religious group. That is a freaking disaster. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah says, Tashawurin, that the husband and wife will make shura on issues that pertain to their family. No one else. And the last, there's more, is that when the sheikh or the group use their piety to justify doing haram. So you may say, man, why do you praise the sheikh so much? Well, mashallah, he's so pious, it doesn't bother him. That's some nonsense. When a person started to praise Sayyidina Uthman, radiyallahu anhu, in Sahih Muslim, in a way which is unbecoming of praising a person, one of the Sahaba grabbed some dirt and threw it in that man's face. And he said, stop destroying him. So when people are using the status, the sacred maqam, or the university that the person studied, or what they know, as a means to justify unreligious behavior, you need to flee with your deen. And that's the danger of toxic populism within our community. So before I just give a few points on Trump, I thought it's important for us to think about how populism within our own history has been used to cause us to turn. And now if we look at Egypt, right, you see that traditional Muslim groups that were highly respected, who made mistakes, are now detested more than Hosni Mubarak. How did that happen? Media, creating populism, toxic populism, to undermine the community. Over and over and over again. We see articles about Ilhan, I don't know, God bless her, right? Coming out of Saudi-sponsored newspapers that are attacking her, saying she's ikhwan. She's not ikhwan, she would be akhawat, first of all. Hey, get your Arabic right. But she's ikhwan, she's that, she's a closet Muslim in the Beltway, whereas people in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, across the spectrum, the political spectrum, have experience with her, love her, and find value in the service she brings to their community. Who's paying for those articles to be written in Arabic? So we need to be very careful of being swayed by toxic populism within the Muslim community. And there's two ways to do that. Number one is to create strong religious leadership that you're able to hold responsible. Right? It's important that we give imams and leaders the freedom to scaffold. Over and over again, I run into communities that are like, we don't want to hire an imam that's more intelligent than the board. So then why don't you hire a board member? Just hire one of the chacha sabs, man, to lead the salah and give khutbah. This is across the country I'm seeing this. Whereas in any other position, if we had an incubator, right, and we wanted to scaffold, and we go up on Upwork, ain't nobody going on Upwork looking for a rookie. We're going on Upwork looking for the best we can find. And I encourage you, if you use Upwork, try to hire people in the Palestinian territories or in Myanmar. You can actually hire brothers and sisters that are in places under siege, mashallah, and contribute to growing their economy. But we're not going to settle for 1 star for our startup. We're going to find the best. What about for the masjid? On the other end, sometimes we hire imams who feel as though they're above reproach. That's a problem in religious leaders. That needs a conversation. Nobody is above reproach. The second thing is, do not make the online world your community. This is your community. Make this your priority. Build the hearts in this building. Grow the community here. Work on unity here. If I put online like, Muslim unity, Ameen, and then I don't talk to Pakistani brothers and sisters in the masjid, I'm like a hypocrite, man. If I put like, yeah, Muslim unity, and then my daughter wants to marry a Somali person, and I use race as a means not to allow that marriage, I'm a hypocrite. That's hypocrisy. If the white convert comes, we're like, oh God, no, Dajjal has arrived, right? But then, if we go look at our Facebook wall, وحدة الأمة لا تفرقوا ألف بين قلوبنا ثبت أقدامنا إيه. So when we craft and work on because I believe sometimes the online community is really an excuse not to be physically responsible. So I can be like the greatest warrior online and the biggest kitten off life. Now that takes us to where we are now, and I'm going to make this quick, because I felt it's important that we talk about our own issues in light of populism and how historically the people that I mentioned, Imam Muslim is another man, Imam Al-Asim Al-Kufi, the Sheikh of Hafs, faces a lot of opposition from people in his city in the name of populist idiots. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, Qadi al-A'zam, faced a lot of problems. Sayyidina Shafi'i. And of course, Imam Ahmad was put in jail. So I want you to remember something, all this information that I gave you, is that our history as a community is filled with Trumps. Religious Trumps. Charismatic buffoons who would sway the ummah to turn against its best and brightest, and create an environment where ignorance was perceived as knowledge, and knowledge was perceived as ignorance. As Abu Ala said, فَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُ الْجَهْلَ فِي النَّاسِ فَاشِيًا تَعْلَمْتُ حَتَّى يُقَالُ أَنِّي جَاهِلٌ. Now that takes us to where we are in this country. How can we counter this populism that's been taking place? I think your community is one of the great examples of how we can counter this populism. Number one, our unity, our unity, our unity, our unity as a community. Unity doesn't mean uniformity. Unity means we expect and embrace our differences. When Sayyidina Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, people would come to him and say, Ayu a'mal al-afdal, what is the best action? Always he has a different answer because people are different. Imam Shati Muwaffaqat, he said, you know, the Prophet as a mufti, mura'at ahwal al-nas. He understands people are different. Al-fatwa تغير بالزمان والمكان والأحوال والأشخاص. Right? The fatwa can change. When this man in the Sunan of Imam Abi Dawud comes to Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he says, can I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? Ala bas mash al-hal ya al-imshi ala tul. He said, of course. The same gathering, another person, he heard, he said, what about me? La, no. Imam al-Aini al-Hanafi, he's a great scholar from Egypt, mashallah. He's buried behind Masjid al-Azhar. In his explanation of Sunnah Abi Dawud, he said, the first man, he's an elderly gentleman. فالكهرباء بتاعه مش قوي يعني. فهمت علي? Like his drive is not strong. But this young man, khalas, he's like full of potential energy. So the Prophet has two different answers for the same mas'ala. لكي يراعي الناس. because he's taking care of people. That's the problem of online fatwa. Online fatwa doesn't know you. Online fatwa doesn't see your family, doesn't see your income situation, doesn't see what you're going through in life. But a local scholar or local imam who knows you, knows your family, knows your situation, is much more intuitive and in touch with what you need. That's why some of our ulama, and this opinion in the Ja'fari school, the Ja'faris, they follow this, that you're not allowed to follow a mujtahid who hasn't lived in your time period. This is a minority opinion in Sunni usul, but this is the majority opinion held by our Shia brothers and sisters. Because the mujtahid that doesn't know you is going to have trouble understanding the situation that you're going through. So, it's very relevant. But Sayyidina Nabi alayhi salatu salam, he understands people. I remember once, mashallah, I was with one sheikh, and one brother, he came and he asked him a question, and the sheikh, he gave him an answer. He said, La, I want to follow the way of the salaf. Naqtadi bi as-salaf. The sheikh, he said to him, Tayyib, the salaf on this mas'ala have 22 opinions. Which salaf you want to follow? He said, what do you mean? They didn't agree on everything? He said, of course not. They didn't agree on everything, man. So which opinion you want me to give you? Then the sheikh, he mentioned the hardest opinion. He said, no, today I'm not going to follow the salaf. So we sit between Ibn Abbas and Sayyidina Ibn Umar. And we need to be careful of people that try to divide us in the name of the truth. But the Prophet ﷺ, he understands people. Look in Surah Al-Hujurat. When the same mistake is committed and the response is different, Sayyidina Abu Bakr, Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhuma, when they raised their voices in front of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah said, أَن تَحْبَطَ أَعْمَالُكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ, that if you do this again, you're going to lose all your good deeds. 3 verses later, those Bedouins from Banu Tamim, when they came to Medina, they began to yell at the Prophet ﷺ in a far more egregious way than Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu anhuma. And Allah says, what? Wallahu ghafur rahim. So the same thing, raising their voices, Abu Bakr and Umar are dealt with sternly because their maqam is different than these new Muslims from Banu Tamim who don't understand yet. La ya'qilun, Allah said about them. They don't know. So what does Allah say to them? Wallahu ghafur rahim. Same sin, different outcomes. That's the danger now of the impatient student of knowledge. The impatient student of knowledge doesn't memorize the Quran. I remember, subhanAllah, when I became Muslim, my sheikh was from Senegal for 10 years. The night I became Muslim, he said, you either are going to be the stupid poster white boy guy or you're going to memorize the Quran. I said, I don't want to be a stupid white poster guy. He was like, I'll see you on Tuesday. So on Tuesday, I went to the NWICC, man. And we started the Senegali NWICC. And he had, mashallah, memorized the Quran, alhamdulillah, in 2 years. But Sheikh was like, look, you can either be rushing your knowledge or you can take time. He said, finish your university studies and become hafiz and finish the alim program. I said, I don't have that kind of time. He said, well, then you're in the wrong field, man. And then he said, after this, you need to serve in the community at least for 2 years as an apprentice, not as a leader. So I apprenticed as an imam in Oklahoma City for 3 years. And he wouldn't even imagine. Hafidh al-Quran, I asked him, can I give khutbah at a small MSA? I was like, Sheikh had bars. Sheikh, لو سمعت يا فضيلة المولانا كنت أزين الكلمات يعني. Sheikh, like, wallahi, you know, it's a very small place. This khutbah is like really insignificant. That he would say to me, are you saying that the maqam of the Prophet is insignificant? Then you're not qualified to give a khutbah, no. I was like, but it's just an MSA. Oh, so you're saying the ummah of the Prophet doesn't matter? Just these people? I was like, Sheikh, I need to go home. Point was, now people don't want that kind of training. They want to become the solution when they themselves are full of problems. So that takes us to one of the first things we should think about in the age of Trump, is creating and scaffolding responsible religious leadership that can be held accountable when needed by the broader community. Second thing in the face of Trump is we need to create our own populism. We should idfa' billati hiya ahsan. We should respond to toxic populism with popular populism, good populism. الشر والخير خير يعني توبة and kibr, Iblis and Adam, always two opposites. What's the opposite of Trump? We should think about that message of Trump and the far right, because Trump is a symptom. He's just a symptom of an existing reality, right? Number one is we should work for the unity of society. We should work for economic class. We should, and this impacts our community, deal with, they have now passed prison reform, right? But we should deal with the prison industrial complex and how historically the Justice Department and the police and the FBI have targeted historically communities of color. We need to be an ally to that. In order to do that, we need to work with others. Unfortunately, our community, we like to talk about working with others, but then we don't really want to work with others. But we find that the Prophet ﷺ in Sahih al-Bukhari, when he was going from Hudaybiyah to make Umrah before the Sulh Hudaybiyah, alayhi salatu wasalam, his camel stops, he points at Mecca, and he says, those people, those kuffar of Mecca, his enemies, if they ask me to work with them to do ma'ruf or silat al-rahm or sha'ir Allah, if they ask me to work towards establishing something of sacred, if they ask me to work to sustain family rights and responsibilities, if they ask me to partner with them to work towards good, I will join them. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim in Zad al-Ma'ad, he said this is the proof that Muslims can work and organize with any people, because nobody's worse than the Quraysh, man. وَهَمُّوا بِقَتْلِ, Allah said in the Quran, وَهَمَّ بِقَتْلِ, they wanted to kill the Messenger of Allah. But still, the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, if those people want to work with me, I'll work with them. Of course, there should be conditions, there should be strategy, it shouldn't just be a free-for-all process. But that profound example is there for us. The third, and I'll finish, is we should create communities of love and support. You know, subhanAllah, I ask a group of college students that I teach once a week, as well as professionals and single parents and others in New York City. I asked them one night, how many of you feel loved by Allah? Only one person raised their hand. Ya Allah, only one person. I said to them, how many of you did good today? Everybody raised their hand. I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yuhibbul muhsinin, yani. But they're coming out of experiences in communities where the emotional value is anemic. Like, do we celebrate our high school graduates in most of our masajid? We ask people, like, are you going to have some kind of celebration? Oh, brother, this is bid'ah. We're not praying, man. This has nothing to do with ibadah. This is adat. Wa adat ibaha. Like, the foundation of adat ibaha, the foundation of these kind of things is permissible in Islam. And what happens is young men and women come through our communities, especially being a teenager, it's hard. A lot of physiological and emotional challenges. Divorcees. There's one sister told me there's a lonely island in the Muslim community called Divorcee Island. And nobody wants to go there, especially if you're a woman. Brothers and sisters who may be separated from their families, maybe the husband is working overseas. How do we bring value to everybody in this room? When I was in Boston, I was only in Boston for 3 years, mashallah. One of the things I challenged our board and our community to do is, how do you make everyone feel valued who walks through that door? And a brother told me, that's hard, man. I said, prophetic work is hard. Like, prophetic work is not easy. To be a lover is hard. So when the Prophet ﷺ, in a sound hadith, was saying, Inna lillahi khawas, indeed Allah has special friends, The Sahaba said, Man hum wa ma a'maluhum ya Rasulallah. Who are those people? قَوْمٌ يَتَحَبُّونَ بِرُوحِ اللَّهِ. The Prophet said, people who love each other. We are very good at hating each other. We're very good at like su'ul dhan. You know, attacking people, tearing people down, destroying them. We're our own worst enemy. But in the face of a toxic populism, which has militarized Islam and militarized color in this country and defamed gender, right? You know, it's important that we buttress that by making sure people here feel loved, man. People in this community feel that we care about them. So while educational programming is very important and religious services are very important, we also need to dedicate a strategic amount of our energy to learning how to make people feel valued. And how do you do that? You ask people, what would you need in the mosque to feel valued? So we ask old people in Boston, our old Somali community. We have, mashallah, there, Brother Anshor, his restaurant is where I learned how to eat bananas and rice. And the best tea in the world is Somali tea, mashallah. I'm no offense to anybody, just try it. It's incredible. And I remember we had a lot of elderly Somali women that lived, you know, around the mosque, very old. We asked them through translators, what do you need to feel valued? Number one, they said, we need some programming in Somali language because, hello, we came to America like in our 70s, homie. We ain't learning a new language at 70, man. So like we need programming in Somali. And number two is, you killing us with these 8 rakat tarawih, man. You know, some of these mashallah sisters will come to Fajr on a asa, yani, on a cane, mashallah. So we changed it. We have a Sheikh Muhammad Shakir. He started teaching tafsir, and we opened the duksi, just for those people. Alhamdulillah. And we had some people, why don't you do it for this community? Okay, if you want to do it for your community, organize, alhamdulillah, we're not threatened by you. If you want to do, so we had one, Chacha Saab, he did Iqbal, poetry, in Urdu. Every Sunday, he taught young kids how to understand shakwa, jawab shakwa, yaqeen mahkam, amal peham, mahabbat fatih alam, all this poetry of alam Iqbal, zindagi be bandagi, sharmindagi. That's not Iqbal. But he taught them this poetry. And you know what? Nobody felt threatened. Then the Masris, Abu lak ya am. Naiz muhadra bilhaq bitana. Okay, mash al-hal ya khud muhadra la طول معلش. So then we had muhadra ammiya Masriya, mashi, no problem. Nobody feels threatened. Then the Latino Muslims came. Can we have a program in Spanish? Of course, no problem. Nobody feeling threatened by this. Hada khair, alhamdulillah. Oh brother, you split in the community. How we split in the community? When they're all in the masjid. They all pray together. So we have unity without what? Uniformity. And people were happy. People didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel threatened by people speaking Urdu. I don't speak Urdu. I didn't feel threatened by people speaking Somali. I don't speak Somali. But I found a place for me in the community that gave me value. So how do we create that value is asking people, asking young people, and then implementing that advice. So alhamdulillah, as we face, you know, this time, I know we like to talk about political stuff and we get into the meta. I like to talk about the micro, that's my job. And I said, number one, historically we're a community from Samiri, right? Samiri is charismatic. Worship the goat, man, the goat got a lot of gold. Goat is fresh and clean. Okay. So they worship a goat because Sayyidina Musa is as not charismatic as Samiri. From that time till now, we love to follow uneducated, charismatic troublemakers. We talked about in the age of Trump that populism is nothing new. It's in the Quran. There's a good and bad populace. populism, in order to counter populism, we need to, number one, enhance and allow religious leadership to be scaffolded and supported, but held accountable. Number two, we need to work on creating a sense of unity without uniformity. And number three is we need to buttress Islamophobia and white supremacy and the challenges of race and identity in America right now by making sure that the masjid is a house of love and care, that we value each other. لا تدخلوا جنة حتى تؤمنوا ولا تؤمنوا حتى تحابوا. Hadith said you won't enter paradise until you believe. You won't believe until you love each other. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this awesome community, inshallah. Always very passionate, great community. Allah accept, inshallah, khair from all of you. We can take a few minutes for easy questions, just the easy ones. And then inshallah we'll finish. Barakallahu feekum wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Any hard questions? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned in the hadith about Musa saying that I will work with Quraysh if they're working towards the human rights, and to translate that into our current times, we do have a lot of allies that are from the homosexual community and from the LGBTQ community, and I know there's a lot of conversation that happens when we partner with them. So can you say something to kind of translate it to the current times, and when we're working towards the same goal of the civil rights or human rights, I believe that we're all humans, and that's what it matters. It doesn't matter if they belong to the LGBTQ or if they belong to the Muslim community. We are not sitting there discussing faith. At that point, we're just discussing rights. So, can you say something about that?
Yeah, so the question is, based on the narration of Bukhari, it's found in Bukhari and also in the Muwatta. The Prophet ﷺ pointing to Mecca and saying, you may have misquoted me, so let me quote it so you hear exactly what was said. The Prophet ﷺ saying, if they invite me, the Quraysh, to Silat al-Rahim, to establish family ties, Sha'ir Allah, to observe obedience to God in any way, the sacred, and the last, al-ma'ruf, anything that falls under societal, cultural good that does not violate a foundation of our religion, I will work with them. So sister's question is then, now politically in America, we have a large number of allies from communities like the LGBTQ community, but also the Zionists. I think we should not work with Zionists off the board completely. It's my personal opinion. Until they denounce the occupation of Palestine and support the BDS movement. But we also work with people who commit shirk. And that's a far more egregious sin than the other sins that were mentioned. But no one has a problem with shirk. So what does that tell you? It tells you we lack nuance. So it's allowed for us to work with anybody where there's intersectionality, as long as we don't compromise our deen. And what that means is that strategically, if I'm going to work with any of these communities, I cannot allow myself to be used in a way that may suggest that we as Muslims agree that what those communities are doing is halal. So what's our approach? Welcoming, but not affirming. I don't have to affirm everybody, right? But I do have to speak truth, my religious truth, that I believe these things are inappropriate, that these things are permissible. That doesn't mean I can't live with you, doesn't mean I can tramp over your human rights, of course not. So where we find the intersectionality on freedom, the ability to build mosques. Now, I don't know if people are aware what happened in North Carolina or South Carolina this week, where under the table, and this is something that you need to be careful, and I need to be careful about Trump. We're all paying attention to the shutdown. You should look at the federal judges that are being appointed in this country right now. And you should look at the bills and laws that are being subtly passed. And one of them was a bill that was passed, I believe in South Carolina, that allows foster and adoption
organization not to allow Catholic, Jewish, and Muslims to adopt, in the name of preserving religious freedom. So, if working with these people is going to help us ensure our existence and our rights and things like this, in a way that I do not have to, and I wouldn't, compromise my positions on issues, then okay. But we need to be firm on our positions. The other thing is we need to stop taking religion from our political leaders. Like, politicians have a tough job, like God bless them. And they may have to take positions for us as a sacrifice that we don't agree with. You can talk to them privately, you can call them, you can speak with them. But I wonder why a community now has suddenly shifted and taken religious guidance from people who aren't trained in religion. Maybe it's because the religious guides are so out of touch and so successfully irrelevant that the community has to shift towards people who are relevant and speak to the challenges of their life. That's why I said earlier, creating like religious leadership that's understanding, intelligent, free, nuanced, and held accountable. But we can work with anyone on issues as long as we don't compromise our teachings and our principles.
So the idea of just being seen with them to support civil rights, that's okay, that's not considered to be...
Number one, if I see you, so Imam al-Mazari was asked a very interesting question. Your question. So let's say I see you at a parade, there's all kind of organizations there that I don't agree with, or a panel or whatever. Okay. Mashi. I've never heard anyone have this problem again with someone being on a panel with people that believe that God had a son. But like, that's shirk. Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the hadith earlier, but also another hadith, he says, إِيَّاكُمُ الظَّنَّ فَإِنَّ الظَّنَّ أَكْذَبُ الْحَدِيثِ. You should avoid bad suspicion. Imam al-Mazari was asked by Sicilian Muslims in his fatawi about those qadis and muftis who served in Sicily under the Normans. Can you imagine the Normans, they had Sharia court, man. They left the Muslims alone. There's documents there in Arabic. It's a very interesting community. So of course, the idea in that age, much more simple political reality, is like you are the qadi for a Christian kingdom. Like purely Christian, not here, not secular, purely Christian. So the question that people ask is, should we assume that those qadis and those muftis and those imams and mu'adhins who live in southern Sicily and work as employees of the Christian state are bad Muslims? So that'd be like me seeing you on a panel or seeing you in a parade. Al-Mazari said, the first glance would perhaps allow you to think that. But we are ordered to assume the best of the believers. So we are commanded to assume that those people are there for noble reasons. The foundation of our relationship with each other is bara'atu dhimma, that all of us are great. We're not naive. And that's why in the science of hadith, Allahu Akbar, if we come across the ulama, they came across a rawi who is majhulul hal, meaning that narrator is unknown. We don't know who he was, who she was, who their teachers were. There's nothing known about them. Okay? They would say da'if. This person is weak because they're unknown, but they were good people. Why would they say because they're good people? Even though they didn't know them. Because we are ordered to assume the best. SubhanAllah. Where's that adab now, man? And who doesn't make mistakes? Everybody makes mistakes. There's an art of talking about mistakes and sitting with people and engaging and trying to, not rushing to assume evil. So in those situations, people should assume the best. Like our sister Ilhan, I don't know if anyone saw Rashida's passionate speech that she gave at CARE. It felt sorry for her. She's like, people don't understand, I'm trying my best, like, I'm new at this, I pray. You know, it's like she had to like beg the Muslim community, a bunch of losers who've never won one election, even in 7th grade, she has to beg us to like forgive her? And she just won a congressional seat? Like, what kind of community are we? That doesn't mean that we can hold them to task. Doesn't mean that we can't have real conversations. I'm sure they would welcome that. But where's the adab in all this? So yeah, I mean, Al-Mazari's answer is so powerful. He's like, taba'ud, like we should avoid bad suspicion. I remember one time I gave a sermon, and after I was walking out, not here, and this brother, he grabbed me and said, man, why'd you give the khutbah about me? I said, do I know you? He's like, no, we never met before. Then how did they give a khutbah about you? I don't know you. He said, no, man, it was like every word, like my wife called you and told you what's going on in our house. I said, brother, wallahi, I don't know. I was looking to get you married till you said that. Like, honestly, I didn't know. Then he was like, man, I'm really sorry. Because a lot of times insecurities justify su'ul dhan. And religion is not a place for people of insecurity. One of the qualities of an imam should be the lack of insecurity. People don't like you, okay. One time Sayyidina Umar, he was walking, somebody came to him and said, wallahi, I hate you. He said, did I do something wrong? He said, no. He said, okay, alhamdulillah. If you hate me, you hate me. What I'm going to do for you? Okay, fine. It's between you and Allah. As long as I didn't do anything to you. I love it when people come say, brother, did you say this? No. I'm so sorry. I said all these bad things about you. I didn't say that. But again, we like to be moved by populism and emotions. So if I see you doing something, my first belief should be, you're a good person. Then I approach you. Say, hey brother, just want to understand, like, why were you on this panel? Or, you know, and we should welcome also this kind of conversation. We shouldn't be overly sensitive. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Shanta. In this age of, we should say, purveyors of religious knowledge or religious wisdom, who, in our mind, to quote you, should be irrelevant, how do you argue the extreme orthodoxy and the literal interpretation, which becomes a ground for being so dogmatic about their opinion? How do you argue with a very literal opinion from the Quran or the Hadith, which suddenly becomes very dogmatic? It's very hard to argue with such irrelevancy. How do you deal with that stuff?
I mean, well, a lot of this is the outcome of postmodernity. So he's asking about how do you argue with someone that says, I just want Quran and Sunnah. And I just want the Quran and Sunnah as it is, with no interpretation. First of all, we could take them to the 6th verse of the 5th chapter of the Quran. Okay, you want the Quran verbatim, word for word as it is. Haqq, yani. Yeah, I want the haqq. Great, Mr. Haqq. Abdul Haqq. Allah says, pay attention everybody. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم. O you who believe, after you've stood to prayer, then wash your face. إذا قمتم فاغسل. شرط وجواب شرط. O you who believe, when you stand to pray, then wash your face. I tell that brother, from now on, I want to see you make wudu after takbir. That's what the verse said. إِذَا قُمْتُمْ فَاغْسِلْ. When you stand, make wudu. You can ask that brother or sister, if you stand to pray, Allahu Akbar إِذَا قُمْتُمْ فَاغْسِلُوا, is that a bid'ah? Is it bid'ah to make takbir and then make wudu? Is that a bid'ah? Yes or no? It's in Quran, brother. That's word for word right there, boy. You saying the Quran got bid'ah in it? Now we see there's a problem with this literalism stuff. On the other end, we got the weed-smoking vegan Muslim who's like, you know, I think wudu is like an esoteric washing, and like, my wudu is like the dew in the heavens is submerged me into sacred light. Man, you better get out of here with all this, man. So we sit between two very, very strange people. And what happens is, these two go to the mosque. So they fighting all the time, man. This dude, homie, is making wudu after iqamah. This person is like got a sacred buzz lit up by the dew of the earth. And you and I are like, yo, man, I'm just trying to raise my kids, man. I'm just trying to raise my kids, dude. you can have your sacred dew. You can have whatever, you know, we'll get you a little basin in the masjid. You can make wudu after you start namaz. But that verse right there proves the two are a problem. So we have rules for interpretation. That's why usul al-fiqh is ma'rifatu dala'il ijmalan wa kayfiyat istifadati minha. A scholar, like in Azhar, when I studied for 7 years, one of the classes you learn is, how do you use evidences? Everybody has evidences. Everybody can bust open a hadith book or Quran. In the Quran it says this, da, da, da. But have you been taught how to interpret? Do you know the 10 conditions for naskh? Do you know the 30 conditions for takhsis? Do you know the qira'at? No. Then, yo, stay in your lane, man. Like, Soulja Boy's not J. Cole. Like, stay in your lane. Right? The Timberwolves are not the Celtics. Stay in your lane. Kyrie. Every rose has its thorn. Every rose has its thorn. And sometimes the butler has to leave. But, and KD, we know when KD, what happened when KD left? I'm just saying, Boston for life. But I'm messing with you. But I'm saying that there's a process of learning. So what's happened in America now? Two things. Most of the imams, the good imams, left the institutions. Why? Because of predatory boards. Tough, man. I've been hired before when I was younger, man, and fired and not even given my severance package. Fired and not even told. Show up to mosque like, why you here? I work here. No, you don't. What? What did I do? Nothing. We just can't afford to pay you back. Yo, Uber, what's up, man? I got this car, you know what I'm saying? Geo Prism. Driving Uber to make ends meet. So most imams and students of knowledge, they saw what happened to our generation, and they were like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to go to college and get a degree and work outside and teach. Or they traveled around with institutions and they raised their money, or they're online, like Bayina, for example, and they made that a dignity. It's not about money. Most people think these imams are making money. No, man, it's about dignity and honor for your family. You know what your kids see you get fired? You know what your kids seeing someone stand up after Jummah and be like, you know, we can't afford to pay him, and his son with his teenage friends are in the audience. So let's all raise money so we can support the imam. Like an embarrassment. So brothers were like, we're out. When they pulled out of the mosques, then you had untrained people who have been exposed to literalism. Literalism is always the easy way out, and took the mantle of religious teaching in the communities. Most of them are engineers. Engineers should never be involved in theology. Theology by its nature is liberal arts. I say that respectfully. Theology is not building a building. Theology is building hearts. And hearts are much more different than buildings, right? So now when imams are starting to come back into the mosque in America, I've seen this. The untrained guy is actually undermining the scholar's entrance back into the community. So we're seeing the second round of, you know what, I'm out. I know a brother who studied for more than 13 years overseas. Great scholar. Goes to a mosque, gets interviewed. Not the engineer, whoever, right? The biologist, okay? Biologist, sheikh, read fiqh sunnah, you know, listened to Sha'arawi and became the mufti. Comes to the board meeting and asks this person one question, and he differs with that person, and he tells the board not to hire him, and the board listens to the biologist. And what he said actually is an issue where differences are allowed. So that brother told me, I'm done, man. This is humiliating. Like, why did I study overseas? Like, these communities don't appreciate us. So imams left, the trained left, The scholars left, and when the deek leaves, the katakit play, ya sheikh. So when the rooster's gone, the chicks become the roosters. Right? And that's what you have. And a chick hasn't had enough experience to understand literalism, interpretation, etiquettes of interpretation, nuance, building people. So in many ways, our attitude towards that's why I said what I said earlier about scholars always being kicked out by populist mobs, still happens today in this country. And that's why now the new phenomenon, and this is even more concerning, most mosques don't have an imam. Or you have the other side of it where the imam becomes like freaking, Thanos, man. Like, I want to run the whole community. Right? No, man. Like, you also need to be advised and taught and listen and learn and grow, and you make mistakes and listen to the community, listen to the needs of people. Right? It's a give and take. That's tough. Allah help us. Any other questions, easy questions before we go? Sisters, have any questions? No questions. Don't come up to me afterwards and say, I have a question. You don't have a question. Al-asl amamana. Right? So, may Allah bless you. Incredible. Yes? Oh, yes, sir.
So, Sheikh, this is, I guess, a very practical question. On the one hand, we talk about the unity within the community. And, in jest, you're talking about, on the one hand, there's the, vegan Muslim, and then on the other hand, there's the literalist. I'm just trying to worry about myself. And what I get concerned about is I want to make sure that I am on the, quote-unquote, right path. And so what I get concerned about is, like, when there's just like how do we navigate between a multiplicity of opinions and our own?
Yeah, so first of all, there's nothing wrong with being vegan, but vegan is not the sunnah. Like, that's an issue I have. People like, being vegan is sunnah. No, the Prophet ﷺ, he loved sweet meat. But if people don't want to eat meat out of an act of environmental resilience, hey, that's good, alhamdulillah. Allah bless you. We should definitely limit our meat consumption. I mentioned it earlier. I don't know if it was lost in what I was saying. That's why you need to have a strong relationship with your local imam. Because oftentimes, Islam is not modern. Modernity says there's one answer. Modernity birthed fascism. Right? When the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, pray in Bani Qurayza. Some of them prayed before, some of them prayed after Maghrib, Asr. He said both are correct. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes there is a multiple number of answers. I'm not trained, so I don't feel comfortable picking one. So what do? I tell the imams now in America, you're like tech support, man. You're tech support. You call them up, Imam, what's the best opinion on this issue? Bam. Okay, I'm good. Al-Mustafti ala madhab al-Mufti. The questioner is on the madhab of the one they question. It should be an easy relationship like that. I honestly suggest, as you grow religiously, it's okay to look at other answers, don't get me wrong, but have that relationship with a local scholar who knows you, man, and knows what's at stake with the answer, understands the nuances of who you are. We say that tasawwur, the ability to see the life of the questioner, right? Hukmu shay far'un an tasawwuri. The ability for me to give you a ruling is the outcome of me understanding you. And that's why Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he said, ma'rifatun nas. Like, what's the quality of a mufti? Is to know people. So my advice is, number one, I want to avoid being laxed, right? I don't want to fall into like a free-for-all, of course. So I cultivate a relationship with a local imam or scholar. And then those answers, khalas. That's the easiest way I can see to do it. But if those imams and scholars are gone, and they're on the celebrity circuit, where they're getting $5,000 a night speaking at Islamic school functions, without having to deal with boards, you see where we've created a problem. So in that situation, try to have a relationship with someone like Joe Bradford, Yasir Qadi, he's busy maybe, but Omar Suleiman, Faraz Rabbani, right? Abdul Nasser Janga, you know, these people try to create where, hey, like for example in New York, there's one guy said to come to me every 3 or 4 months with your questions. So we sit like half the day, and he just says, boom, 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 boom. There's one sister, she comes, boom, 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 boom. And if they say to me like, I don't really know if that is the best answer for me, say, okay, here is the other answer, and here's the scholar I know who has that answer that you can talk to. Like, that's how it should work. We're not in the era of Gandalf and Bilbo, right? Where the sheikh and the imam, unfortunately, can hang out. That was 10, 20 years ago. Now, we have to frame it in a way of, let me come and get, like, it's almost like a startup pitch. Like, let me get a good 20 minutes in every 3 or 4 months. I traveled one time to one scholar in Saudi Arabia. And I thought like, man, he'll see I came from America, so he'll like give me some time. He was like, you got 20 minutes, bro. I was like, I came from America. He's like, that dude came from China. I was like, okay, so I got my 20 minutes and left, you know? And actually he showed me this classical text. And he's like, you know, unfortunately, you don't have time to copy the text, so I pulled out my phone and took a picture of it. He's like, what'd you just do? I was like, look, Sheikh, I took a picture of the book. He's like, wow, okay, shout there. Smart. So cultivating that tech support relationship. And trusting yourself sometimes, man. Sometimes you got to make your own opinion. So what? Sometimes you have to look at scholarly, Al-Qarafi talks about this. You look at legitimate scholarly opinions and you see this is the best one for my situation in dunya and akhirah, and you follow it. And the third, it's a good question, is that we have to facilitate the job of imams to teach people. I left being an imam so I could be an imam. You understand what I mean? So I went to university, because what do you do at a university? You teach. Doesn't mean the communities are bad, it's just I felt that, especially after the Boston bombing, I was being pushed into the media, and people were trying to push me to create good Muslim, bad Muslim narrative. And I was like, no. Under Obama, right, you got the good Muslim, bad Muslim narrative. Under Bush, bad Muslim narrative. I'm saying, under Obama, good Muslim, bad Muslim. Like, Salafis are bad Muslims. I don't believe that. Sufis are good Muslims. I don't believe that. They may be good, they may be good. They may be bad, they may be bad. We're moralists at the end of the day. We don't care about those kind of things. I care about moral competency. But I didn't want to be used, especially as a white man in America, to push that narrative. So I said, listen, I want to teach. I don't even want to be on I don't be on CNN. We got people that can be on CNN that are really talented. So I pulled back and found a job at university, because there I could teach. And you can say whatever you want in the university and not get fired. But mashallah. So I think that's the other issue, brother, is like, what is the job description we have for imams? Is it jointly crafted by the imam and the leadership? Is it a one-way street from the imam? Or, that's not good. It should be jointly crafted. And the community should be involved. Like, what do we want from an imam or religious leader? What do we need as a community? Everyone says, I need after-school programs for my kids. That's across the board. Or just like once or twice a week where our young people, like today earlier, can just hang out, ask questions. Like if I was an imam, I would take the kids to see Spider-Man, man. No, seriously, man, the whole thing about jumping off the ledge and being brave and being strong and confronting your fears, taking on challenges, there's a lot of beautiful religious messaging in that. If you take the kids out, watch Spider-Man, you know, get a free movie, alhamdulillah. And then afterwards you could talk about, okay, like what religious lessons have we extracted from knowing the ledge? Those are good things, man. Like we need that kind of service in our community. Take like one more question. It's almost 9:30. Whew. MashaAllah, y'all hang out late. What is that dish you guys eat here, the fish? You know that fish dish? Lord have mercy. It's like fasikh. You know fasikh in Egypt? It's like their fasikh. Man, that's strictly white people's food, man. My folks are crazy. Allahumma ighfir li qawmi fa innahum la ya'lamun. Barakallah. Yes, sir.
I would ask if nobody answers this question. I'll give somebody a chance that might get a chance to ask you. Nobody answers that question, I'll ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, in those situations, somebody looking at different opinions, or even like a common business talk. So where do you draw the line, or what is your advice about people saying, well, I'm following this madhab, Hanafi, Shafi, whatever it is, but I find the opinion of a different scholar from a different madhab to be more practical and more reasonable than certain madhab. And where would you draw the line, or is it very hard?
So the question now is, first of all, we live in a post-madhab age. Actually, we live like in a trans-madhab age. Madhabs largely achieve power because of political patronage, right? The Marabitun imposed the Maliki madhab. The Muwahidun who came after them imposed the Zahiri madhab. Before them in Andalus, the madhab was the madhab of Awza'i. Nobody even knows Imam Awza'i from Lebanon. And then you had the Shafis in Afghanistan. For years, Bust was the capital of the Shafi'i madhab. Then, subhanAllah, people came, brought the Hanafi school through Khurasan, through other places. Iran, up until now, the Sunni community in Iran are Shafis. That has to do with political reality. Now the Muslim state is gone. And Muslims have the idea of citizenry has been redefined and renegotiated. So we live in a trans-madhab world. Those madhabs no longer function with the same utility that they used to function with. Like you don't have the so if you go to the books in, for example, if you go to the books on business, in the most classical book of any madhab, Khalil, Hidayah in the Hanafi madhab, Mughni al-Muhtaj in the Shafi'i madhab, Manir al-Sabil in the Hanabila. What are you going to find as issues that are being talked about in commerce? 401k, Bitcoin. No, you're going to find donkeys, potatoes, rules, rice, because the madhabs stopped. Pre-industrial age froze. Consequently, you don't have the madhabs updating their stuff. So you're going to tell me that somehow you're going to study that and be able to translate that to today. A scholar can do that, but not the common people. The point I'm making is that these madhabs now, if they don't get it together, are going to slowly seep into irrelevance, except in acts of worship. And this is the outcome of secularism. Secularism now is like pulling back the tide of religion. The only thing left is and you see this in the Muslim world. In Egypt, the only areas where Sharia is discussed is acts of worship, divorce, and inheritance. That's it. There's a joke. It says, if you go to Arab countries, this is sad, right? You find that Wizarat al-Siha, the tourist department, has imported alcohol. The religious department has said alcohol is haram. The Department of Commerce is taking the profits off alcohol, and the police are arresting people for being drunk. This is confusion, man, right? Because there's no foundation. So is it allowed for a person to do that? It's allowed for a person to do that. It's called Talfiq al-Mahmud and Talfiq al-Madhmum. Talfiq al-Madhmum is that if I took the madhabs, this opinion, that opinion, and that opinion to justify haram behavior, that's when it's not allowed. For example, in the Maliki madhab, the wali can marry himself. Al-wali, he can also do the nikah for himself. Okay? In the Maliki madhab. You're Hanafi. Don't look confused. You guys don't even have to have a wali. Number two is, let's take the Hanafis, no wali. The Malikis, some of them say no shuhud. It's a weak opinion in the school, but it's there. Okay? So now I say, no wali, no witnesses, what's up? Swipe right on Minder, what's up? What madhab you follow? Hano Maliki. Hano Maliki, it's a new madhab, right? Where's the wali? Nah, girl, I'm Hanafi. Where's the witnesses? I'm Jafari. What are you? What's up? That's haram. But let's say I'm Hanafi. I pray Asr late. The masjid, the Imam al-Shafi, they pray masjid earlier. I should be with the community, man. The Hanafis, the only group who prays Fajr after the sun is up. Commendable. Not up like up, but you can see light in the sky. After the Gharas al-Shams. The other three, they say the Waqt al-Ikhtiyari is to pray when it's dark outside. Am I not going to pray with the Jama'ah so I can pray on my madhab? That's not the purpose of the madhab. The purpose of the madhab is to sustain the ummah. And those madhabs existed, except in Egypt, by the way, and parts of the Levant, existed in isolation. So like the Maliki books in Egypt, you learn the Hanafi opinion, you learn the Shafi opinion, because Qahira was like a robust community. So yeah, I mean, if it's going to be about things like this, as long as I'm not trying to follow it to do something haram, it's okay. Yes, sir.
Now, all pursuit and development of our own learning, how should one approach the study in a trans-madhab world?
Exactly. So first of all, someone should learn a madhab well, if they can. If they can't, they just follow their imam. Like if you don't have time to study, just follow the imam. That's the easiest issue. That's what the imam's there for. Imam knows. Well, brother, I don't know. You know, I went to the University of Oklahoma and I have a degree in education. I just don't know if I trust this PhD from Medina. How come you don't have the same opinion about your pharmacist? We undermine religious leadership, man. There is a hatred. There is a hadith, it's not strong. It says the ulama in our community are like the prophets were to the Jewish community. Like we have a problem with our ulama. It's funny, and one scholar said, you know, the scholars blame for everything now. You know, the GDP in Pakistan is horrible. Man, I hate the ulama. These ulama. What the ulama have to do with the GDP? In America, you know, these scholars, this is why our ummah is so horrible. Okay, have you maximized all your potential to be a better ummati have you helped that scholar? Do you support him, her? Do you help them set up their audio visual stuff? Have you volunteered your time to see if they need help researching? No. They're like, what are you talking about, man? It's like complaining about someone that has a flat tire and I drive by. I don't want to help them. So number one is, if I have time to learn one madhab really well, right? Then to learn the usul and some of the evidences. And then, in my life, if I'm running into challenges, as a fourth, I should learn comparative fiqh. What are the different opinions of the madhahib on these opinions? Because, for example, in the Hanafi usul, it says that you can follow any opinion from Ahl Sunnah. It's very clearly mentioned in Usul al-Shashi. So, learn the madhab, and then maybe the imam is not Hanafi. So you could ask him like, hey, in the Hanafi maslak, we do this. Why do you got to do that? He can teach you. It's like really interesting. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah bless all of you. Bless these beautiful babies that were like lighting it up with their beautiful voices, mashallah. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yajma'ana ma sayyidi habibina rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kama amanna bihi wa lam narahu. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make unity more beloved to us than disunity. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make husnul dhan before su'ul dhan. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us to have love for each other and mercy and concern and genuine empathy for each other. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us and unite us with Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wassalamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.